What's going on, everybody? Oh, man, it's Friday, week 6. About to happen. Scott, thanks so much for joining me for the little bonus stream of the podcast. Hell of a Thursday night game we're coming off of. Going to be tough to top that barn burner that we got, late game action. Justin Fields, late game heroics, trying to make it happen. Darnell Mooney not making it happen. Going to be tough to top that one for the rest of week 6 here, man.
I'll say this: that game ended on a spectacular play, a very exciting play. There wasn't much else to recommend from it, and if you started anybody in that game, you're probably in a fantasy deficit. But that's what we're here for. Benjamin will score 5 touchdowns for you on Sunday, and you'll go home a winner.
There you go. Yeah, I saw Drew Dinkmeyer from ETR point out that Eno backwards is 1. So, hey, he is the one. He is ready to go. Before we dive into some of your questions out there, and of course, if you're watching on Twitter, you're watching on YouTube, make sure you drop a question in the respective chat channels. I'll be keeping an eye on that. I'll call them up. But let's start off with some of the big news that's broken here on Friday. And we did get a couple of big items here, Scott, starting with Cam Akers. This comes in from Jordan Rodrigue of The Athletic. Sean McVay says that Cam Akers won't be here today, was out yesterday, listed as a personal reason, and he's out for Sunday. McVay says that the team is working through this situation, and he also declined to say whether Akers will be part of the team in the future. Again, they're, quote, working through some things. This took me by surprise, Scott. Obviously, I think it took most of us by surprise, but we don't know what's going on with Cam Akers. It's really not worth speculating about. But, obviously this lines up Darrell Henderson for a big opportunity against a Panthers team that you can run on in week 6.
Yeah, it was strange last week. I believe Henderson had more snaps, but never carried the ball. When we talk about the Rams offense, the word that we all often use is broken. I mean, all they have right now is Cooper Kupp, short, sprinkling in a little Tyler Higbee. They don't trust their offensive line. Stafford hasn't looked confident or healthy most of the season. But here's the bottom line at running back. We are chasing opportunity. We're chasing volume, and Darrell Henderson's going to get it. They are big favorites against Carolina. We love that. We know how running back fantasy production often lines up with the game script with a team that's going to play with a lead. You would think they would do that. Carolina's defense isn't bad, but they have PJ Walker, ostensibly a 3rd or 4th string quarterback starting this week. They've been a mess all season. So hopefully you didn't drop Darrell Henderson, or you were able to win the scramble to the waiver wire to get him today, because he's one of those guys right now. He has double-digit touches in his back pocket before they even kick off, and that obviously has fantasy value, more as an RB2, maybe even as a flex. But, I mean, he's got to get opportunity, and that's what we're always chasing in the backfield.
Yeah, Carolina's 16th in the NFL in rushing success rate allowed. They're a much better, I think, pass defense than they are a rush defense. We also know that Carolina is undergoing a lot of transition from a coaching angle, right? Steve Wilkes is the interim coach now. Phil Snow, I think, was doing a good job as the DC in Carolina, but he was like a pure Matt Rule crony, so he's out the door. We got a question on Twitter. Andy something or another, can't see it all the way over there, asked us, like, Alec Pierce, a guy that we both really like going forward. We talked about on the podcast yesterday. We've been talking about Alec Pierce for a few weeks right now. Alec Pierce is Andy's 5th receiver. Is that a guy worth dropping to make a move to get Darrell Henderson if he is there? Chris on YouTube, if we want to pull that one up, he asks, how much fab would you put down on a guy like Darrell Henderson? I mean, it's tough, Scott, because we don't know. I think yes, you drop a guy like Pierce for Darrell Henderson. The fab question is a little more complicated because we have no idea when, if Cam Akers will be back with this team.
Right. This could be a temporary move. This could be, obviously they could bring in other pieces. Nobody thinks Darrell Henderson is a special player. He's just somebody who's percolated to the top of the depth chart of an offense, again, that has all sorts of problems. A line we don't trust. There's not a lot of buoyancy to this offense, right? I mean, it's not like Cam Akers is going to be living in the red zone and be getting goal line touches, coming out of his ears. But he is a starting running back now for as long as that lasts on a Sean McVay offense. And just because we can say the Rams are quote unquote broken, right? I mean, we could say the Broncos are broken. We could say the Panthers are broken. The Steelers have the worst team Mike Tomlin's probably ever had. There are so many teams that, just when I thought the Jaguars could be trusted, they lose to Houston. So they're kind of in disarray right now. A lot of people don't like Cliff Kingsbury, and I guess I'm on that bus. Maybe I'm not driving that bus, but I have a seat somewhere near the front of the bus. So there's a lot of offense. The Patriots are playing with a backup quarterback. Miami's on their 3rd string quarterback right now. I never remember, Matt, Our good friend JJ Zacharyson, late round QB. That's how he built his brand, and that was his flag plant, right? I've never remembered in my fantasy time, I played for a long time, where the quarterback play around the league was this uncertain, where there were just a handful of guys I trusted. Because I went into the season thinking, even if I don't get Allen or Jackson or Justin Herbert, that's fine because Brady's here and Russell Wilson's going to be good and Dak Prescott I can rely on. And I don't know what happened. Matt Stafford, we know we had the elbow, but I thought it's not going to be a big deal. I still drafted Cooper Kupp really early, so I couldn't have been that worried about Stafford. He's got McVay. I look around the league. Maybe Trey Lance was going to be a thing. That didn't happen. Justin Fields has no help. This is when you don't have a quarterback that's solidified in the room. You don't have an offense. The quarterback's the connective tissue to everybody else. And right now, I feel like 2/3 of the league either is really bad at quarterback right now, or at least has questions about it. I feel like there are 7 or 8 offenses I can invest every weekend with a fair level of trust, and everybody else I have to be nervous about.
Mm-hmm. And even one of the guys we trust in Patrick Mahomes, like you can really only play Travis Kelce out of that passing game, right? Because it's so spread out, which is I think another problem. Not only the quarterback issues that you mentioned, but some of these teams. I know we've got some Gabe Davis questions that we'll get to here. Probably because like teams are spreading it out more than ever. Even a team like the Bengals, has 2 guys theoretically, but that Joe Burrow's not playing that well. So I agree with you, Scott. It's been a very weird start to the season. I think quarterback plays a huge part of it. I think the way offenses are designed now is a huge part of it. And as I always say too, we'll get to a point in the year, November, December, we'll be looking back on what some of the things that we've said here in September and October and think that we're like the biggest idiots in the world. Right. And there's already things I said in August and July that I certainly am like, wow, what an idiot for saying that. So that's just the way the NFL goes. The one thing that is constant with football and fantasy football is chaos. And that's what we have here with this Cam Akers situation. We got one more question on Darrell Henderson and then I'll move us on here. We talked about Jeff Wilson a lot on the podcast. I know we have a Jeff Wilson related question in the YouTube chat as well, but on Twitter, someone asked, would you play Darrell Henderson over somebody like Jeff Wilson? I think probably not, just because I have a little more faith in the 49ers infrastructure right now, and that's a good matchup against the Falcons. What about you?
Yeah, I'm a Wilson guy too. He's earned circle of trust privileges. We hope Henderson can get there. I would also, just to piggyback on some things you just said, you want some of my stuff to look bad, you don't have to look far back. Every week I'm going to be wrong on something, and probably bombastically so. And I like to say every season is weird in its own way. It's a snow globe league. In the NFL years, they age like dog years. Last year the Tennessee Titans were the AFC's number 1 seed. Last year the Arizona Cardinals were the last team to lose a football game. They were 7-0 before Miami got to do their champagne pop. Nobody thinks Arizona's going to the Super Bowl this year. Nobody thinks the Titans are going to the Super Bowl. That just shows you how quickly things change and the chaos of the league. And that's why you have to try to it's a little bit ghoulish, but you have to arrange your fantasy roster like things are going to happen. That's why Samaje Perine should be on a roster. That's why Joshua Kelly should be on a roster. We don't want our good friend Austin Eckler getting hurt, but if he doesn't get hurt, Josh Kelly's got a meaty role, and he's actually playing a lot right now.
Dude, Austin even said on the podcast this week, like, roster Josh Kelly, right? Yes. Like we roster Josh Kelly because
he's given us Eckler's given us great fantasy intel since he's been a part of Yahoo Sports. So certainly listen to him. He's inside the building. He's given us stuff that we can use, which is refreshing because God knows most of the coaches in the league, you're lucky they'll admit there's a game on Sunday, let alone what they're going to do with personnel. But yeah, take it from Austin. He knows the backfield. And I think Perine's very much under-repped right now. Just like I wouldn't have dropped Henderson. Benjamin, some people probably held on to him for a few weeks. James Conner's a little bit on the older side. He's not doing much with his opportunities. I'm excited for Benjamin this week. I don't know how high I'm going to rank him up. I haven't done my final wash on the rankings, but he's a proactive play. In fact, if somebody may have Benjamin or Henderson as a choice, I would certainly go Benjamin.
Yeah, that's interesting because I haven't obviously updated my rankings either. I've just got them pulled up right now, and I was going to talk about Benjamin here a little bit. Like, I think you get to about, for me, it's running back 15. It's the Jeff Wilson zone, where I start to, you're starting to look then at like CEH, J.K. Dobbins, Najee Harris. I mean, a guy that has been a rough part right so far. This year, not an ideal pick in the first round. Probably I think the worst first round pick you could have made this year is probably Najee Harris, because I think Jamar Chase will get back on track. And like, that's sort of the zone where I'm starting to weigh these, Benjamin types, the Darrell Henderson types. And I think I'm with you that I will have Benjamin ahead of Darrell Henderson when we come to it. So yeah, I think we're both expecting pretty good things from Benjamin this week. It's just a great matchup against the Seattle Seahawks. But other injury news we got, I don't know that there's a ton of other ones. Like we're still kind of keeping an eye on Chris Olave, who is a limited participant in practice this week. Today on Friday, Jarvis Landry and Michael Thomas probably not going to play. I think Michael Thomas has officially been ruled out. Our guy Taysom Hill's about to get 50 touches in this game, Scott. The other one I do want to pick your brain on before taking a bunch of questions here, with T. Higgins. Suited up for today's walkthrough. I think he's probably designated as like a limited participant in practice, but he hasn't practiced all week with the ankle injury. I have T. Higgins. Here's another brag, Scott. I guess not really now at this point, but I have T. Higgins on a lot of teams. It just ended up being a guy that I took a lot as my second wide receiver usually. I have no idea how to feel about T. Higgins after last week dealing with this ankle injury. I mean, he put up a stone 0 spot and, ended up being the guy that decided a lot of my matchups because of that. How would you feel if you had T. Higgins on some of your teams? How would you feel about throwing him out there with this weird week of practice, obviously putting up the 0 spot last week? And our questions overall about the Bengals right now.
Yeah, at least for the first 2 weeks, you could blame it on the offensive line. Burrow had taken 13 sacks. They were trying to get players who had never played together before and figure that out. A lot of it's on Burrow, too, because sacks can be a quarterback stat as well as an offensive line stat. They have cleaned up the protection problem. I think it's only 5 sacks the last 3 weeks, but the Bengals have been disappointing. They're getting looks. My friend Michael Salfino was talking about this. The Bengals are getting looks where they're daring Cincinnati to run them out of that defense. And Joe Mixon right now is averaging 3.1 yards a carry. He's looked really sluggish. Again, I don't want to make P. Ryan into some superhero. I think he needs to play a little bit more. The problem with most Higgins rosters is your construction is probably such that you attacked receiver early, which I thought was totally reasonable. But the middle of your draft was probably other positions. You're trying to catch up at running back, maybe stockpile there. So a lot of people who roster Higgins just may not have a great option. I wouldn't bench him for somebody like Jacoby Myers as much as I do like Jacoby Myers. I wouldn't bench him for maybe a desperation fab pickup like Darius Slayton. I think you might just have to ride it out, assuming there's no... If there's any indication he's on a limited snap count, maybe you have to pull back. I was probably too aggressive last week when St. Brown was healthy for Dallas, or active for Detroit, I should say. That, okay, I'm just going to play St. Brown. I'm not benching that guy. And then, he played limited snaps, and I felt like a dope. Not to mention Detroit didn't score any points. They went 0 for 17 on 4th down. They tried. They did move the ball. I don't think it was as bad as the final score indicates. They didn't score any points, so they didn't move it. But Higgins is tough because you may not have – there aren't enough good receivers that – you're like, oh, I got 5 or 6 great receivers. I'll just plug in a really good player that I'm not using. You may not have that really good player. You talked about spread usage. What if I told you, okay, Patrick Mahomes would have 15 touchdown passes this time of the year, and the only pass catcher we'd be getting any mileage out of is Kelsey, not counting CEH. He's throwing to second and third tight ends. Right now, MVS doesn't have a touchdown yet. Juju doesn't have a touchdown yet. And then Pat Fitzmaurice pointed out this great stat. The quarterback rating when they target Juju is like 11 points lower than Baker Mayfield's quarterback rating.
Oh my God.
It's just I mean, it's a great stat from Pat, but just depressing for me to see it.
I know. Yeah, I'm with you, man. And I drafted a good bit of Juju for the first time in human history this year, and I'm not liking it so far. So let's go to some of the questions we've got here.
Sure.
Let's start at YouTube. Chris Genova asked a question about looking for one wide receiver and one flex out of this group. Adam Thielen, Romeo Doubs, DJ Moore, no. Tyler Boyd and Taysom Hill. I love that Taysom Hill's mixing his way into this group, man. I know that you and I both have like pretty low expectations for the Carolina passing offense, but which one of these two guys, wide receiver and flex, stand out to you?
Man, they're not obvious choices. I come down to Thielen and Hill, and you have to. It takes a certain stomach to play Taysom Hill because he could easily score 0 points in any week, and he's not going to have a lot of snaps, but. Because key personnel is going to be out, because he's proven to be so dynamic around the goal, I got to figure he gets those high leverage. I compared him to a hockey player who only plays in the power play. So that's where the points are. And fantasy hockey, and by the way, fantasy hockey is open for business. The season started a couple of days ago. I have a hockey draft tonight I'm really excited about. Maybe I'll draft Taysom Hill in that league too. But Taysom Hill, I feel like, is a good bet to score a touchdown. I'll have to check his touchdown prop this week. And I'll play Thielen. I know he doesn't have much of a ceiling because they've leaned into Jefferson recently, and Dalvin Cook looked back in form last week. But still, it's a very narrow usage tree. The breakout hasn't really happened for Irv Smith yet. So I go Thielen and Hill. I would not fight you on Dobbs. I think you have to certainly sit Boyd and DJ Moore. It breaks my heart. I'm not playing him.
Just on the Taysom Hill thing, I've seen this kind of popping up on Twitter. I think this is from a couple like local Saints and local Vegas reporters are showing that a civil lawsuit was filed Friday against Alvin Kamara, which includes photographs of the alleged beating of a man outside a Las Vegas nightclub. Asked the jury to award the victim $10 million. So like this Alvin Kamara thing is not over, number one. And is it like Taysom Hill is already the goal line back for this team? How many more goal line opportunities is he going to get if Alvin Kamara, who actually doesn't have a touch within the 5, like an opportunity, target, touch, anything inside the 5-yard line this year because of freaking Taysom Hill? So I'm with you about flexing Taysom Hill. Charles asks us kind of more of a bigger picture question. Who is the lowest ranked wide receiver you should trade Jeff Wilson for because the other San Francisco backs are getting healthy? Tyrion Davis-Price got in a full practice this week, although I don't know, I don't know about TDP if he's going to make a big bunch of noise there. Eli Mitchell coming back at some point. Like, I think we could and Tevin Coleman, I said this yesterday on the podcast, Scott, like Tevin Coleman played pretty well, right? Like he played pretty well against Carolina Panthers, like shockingly so. But in terms of wide receivers, anyone that you think is like a good buy for a guy like Jeff Wilson? I mean, these questions are always difficult, but I guess I should rather ask you, like, is Jeff Wilson like a sell high guy right now?
It's a great question because Jeff Wilson, we're going to be looking in a month from now, it's going to be like, oh man, thank God you cashed out on Jeff Wilson, or, oh man, thank God you didn't give up on Jeff Wilson. He's going to play the rest of the year. I don't know what they're going to do when Mitchell's healthy. I don't think Coleman's going to take his job away. I'm not worried about TDP. So those are non-starters. And obviously, when it comes to trading Wilson, if Charles and I were to have a deeper conversation, we talk about how deep his running back room was, what he's playing at receiver. One manager may be better served trading Wilson, where a different manager may be better served holding him. But to answer this question just more generally, I would have to be getting a receiver back who I would view as an every week starter. At least somebody like Adam Thielen, and maybe even a little bit better than that, because there's just so few right answers at running back. I think Wilson's played well enough to have like lower end RB2 or that Sigmund Bloom what the heck flex value even when Mitchell is healthy. I think Wilson's going to be still plausible, still somebody we're talking about. So I would, if you don't like the Jeff Wilson offer, my advice would be not to take it. I mean, meaning, don't talk yourself into a Jeff Wilson trade. If the trade doesn't really make sense to you the first moment you hear it, say, no, you know what? I'll just ride it out with Wilson.
Yeah, because I agree with you that TDP coming back probably doesn't move the needle because Jeff Wilson's just played so well. He's looked so good. Like, I think I'd want to shoot for like a receiver in the rest of the season ranking, sort of in the range of like a Devontae Smith or a Chris Olave when he gets healthy, like Tyler Lockett. But I don't know that anybody's giving you that for Jeff Wilson, but that's sort of the range I would shop at. Like Adam Thielen, to me, I'm with you. Like you can view him as an every week start, but like we just had a question about Adam Thielen, right? Like when Chris Olave is healthy, when Tyler Lockett's healthy, like those guys should be every single week starters, So that's sort of the area I'd want to shop in, which means I might not get the Jeff Wilson trade done, which to your point, maybe you don't need to get it done. Daniel Church on YouTube asked us, should I sell super high or should I hold on Breece Hall? And I feel like you and I are both going to be on the same page. Like I would hold Breece Hall here.
Yeah, I want you to sell him to me. I want all the Breece Hall. He is a special player. He's not going to be game scripted out no matter what the Jets do on defense, no matter how well or how poorly Zach Wilson plays. And unfortunately, the thing that's frustrating about the Jets to me is I don't know what to do with Garrett Wilson right now or Elijah Moore, guys who at different points of the year we've been really, really high on. But this is Breece Hall's offense. This is Breece Hall's team right now. I want to be in on this.
Yeah, me too. I'm with you on that 100%. We got a question on Twitter. Najee Harris or Darrell Henderson? We talked about Darrell Henderson earlier, and I think he fits into the range above Najee Harris in my rankings. Now, one little silver lining, I did read a report that like he might be no longer playing with like something in his foot, right? Like he might, I can't remember what it was now. This is great showmanship by me off the top of my head. Like I don't remember what it was, but something that he has been playing with, like a screw or a plate or something in his foot. He got it removed. Maybe that helps. I think the only explanation for how bad Harris has been this year is that he is playing banged up, which like you almost just wish he wouldn't play. But I don't think he's a player that you can like start and feel great about right now. Whereas with Darrell Henderson, I feel like you can.
No, because two things. Game script's always going to be a problem for Harris. And last week, when they got way behind, they used Warren a lot more than we'd seen before. Also playing with a rookie quarterback. Before that was playing with a limited Mitch Trubisky. It's hard to really to invest in anything in Pittsburgh. The one player I am excited about, and this doesn't isolate me in any means, because a lot of people would agree with this. George Pickens, last 2 weeks has really popped, and I think Pickens's exposure, his market share, his routes are going to go up, and I think eventually they're going to phase out Chase Claypool. It hasn't completely happened yet, but you look at the per target stats. I mean, they're getting twice as much yardage from a target to Pickens as they are to a target to Claypool. Eventually, the Steelers have to steer into that. But man, my advice, this is all I can tell you if you have Harris. You got to hope he has a big game somewhere down the line, and then maybe you can trade him off the big game. You can't trade him right now because you're going to get 30 cents or 20 cents on the dollar, but everything all the signs are bad. Game script looks bad. His backup is playing. We don't know how healthy he is. Nobody likes that Pittsburgh offensive line, and there's no buoyancy to the offense. It's just Mike Tomlin is finally going to have a losing season, and he's never had it before. He's a great coach, but I don't think this is salvageable.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. If you are watching the show and we don't get to your question, we're going to get to a lot more before we jump out of here. But remember, you can listen to Scott and Andy this week. Joined us on the preview show, the Yahoo Fantasy Football Forecast. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. That's why we're doing this, to expand on all of our thoughts yesterday. We hit a ton of stuff yesterday, Scott. It was an awesome show. So make sure you go subscribe to that out there. We got a question here, and I think this is interesting because I saw this video as well. Adam Levitan, this person submitted the question, said Adam Levitan has DeAndre Hopkins as a sell high while you can candidate. Do you agree? And if so, what am I aiming for? I get the theory behind this, right? Because like, DeAndre Hopkins' value probably is never higher than it is right before he comes back, right? But I guess you run the risk there, and like it's sort of painful because like you probably held D-Hop all this time. But do you understand that argument? Like that, okay, I could sell this guy right now at his peak value, because if he comes back and has like a trash game in his first game back, then his value immediately starts to depreciate.
I first want to just throw some props to ETR, to Evan Silva and Adam Levitan, two very sharp guys. Levitan he may be my favorite outside Yahoo person in the industry as far as to follow. He plays a lot the way I do, where he's a gut feel guy. He's a figure out the news and the noise. What does a coach say that matters? What does a coach say that's BS? He's so good at that. And also, if you ever listen to a podcast, they mention Matt Harmon's name all the time. So they're big fans of at least some of the Yahoo analysts. I don't know if they ever care what I think, but Levitan's a really sharp guy. And I think
100%.
There's something called the endowment effect, which is the idea, like, Matt, if I told you in July I had the greatest Christmas present for you, by the way, spoiler, I don't have the greatest Christmas present for you, but I told you about it.
I would be weirded out if you did, honestly.
Yeah. Well, maybe the best wedding present for you, whatever. You wait for something, you wait for something, you wait for something, you wait for something. It's like if I told you that I just saw the greatest movie ever, and then 3 or 4 months later you finally see it after everybody told you it's the greatest movie ever. How can it possibly live up to it? A lot of times in fantasy baseball, when they call up the hot prospect, I say that's the best time to maybe shop them, when people are excited about it. So I get the angle that Levitan is taking. Here's the thing also. You don't have to make a trade. It doesn't have to be, I got to take the first Hopkins offer I get, or I got to tell everybody I'm dying to get rid of Hopkins. Put your entire receiver room. Okay, if you have Hopkins and you want to follow this advice, this is how you do it. You say, hey, look, guys, I got some really good receiver depth. I got some guys who are playing well. I got a guy coming off suspension, blah, blah, blah. Here are the 6 guys I got. Anybody interested? Let's talk. Are you deep at running back? I need a running back. Let them come up with Hopkins. Let them talk themselves up into Hopkins. If you pitch it as I'm the Hopkins guy. Here, you come and get him. People are going to be very suspicious, even if they shouldn't be, and you're not going to get anywhere. Put the whole room on the market. Even if you're really not going to trade them, the guys you're not going to trade them Devontae Adams, you're not going to trade them Jamar Chase, whatever, that's fine. Just give them the illusion that they can have a choice of anybody they want, and see if you can get them to come up with Hopkins on their own.
I agree with that completely. I probably wouldn't bother trading Hopkins for a receiver in the same kind of tier, which again, I think that Tyler Lockett, Chris Olave, Devontae Smith group, I think that's the same tier of receivers at this point. But if you could jump up to Hopkins to like a Mike Williams or a DK Metcalf type of guy, I could see that. And then obviously at the running back position, like, shoot, if you can get a clear-cut starter back for Hopkins, who I think will probably not be like peak DeAndre Hopkins when he returns for a variety of reasons, you can get a clear-cut starter at running back. That Breece, like a Breece Hall, Dameon Pierce, Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders, like sign me up, I think, for that. So that's sort of the area I would personally be shopping in. But I agree with Scott. Like, you don't want to just say, like, come get DeAndre Hopkins, like, come get anyone on my roster. Trading is so hard in fantasy football.
You know who you target to? Target the receiver you like the most who does very little this week. Like, say Mike Williams on Monday night has a 2 for 13. That's when you go get Mike Williams, man. And people say, oh, get them nervous. Oh, Allen's going to come back. It's a crowded usage tree in LA. That's when you go get Mike Williams. That's when maybe a Hopkins. You have to put a throw in there. But if I upgraded from Hopkins to Mike Williams, I'd be over the moon.
Love that call. All right. Nick Novo asked us on YouTube. He also asked us at the start of this, between me and you in a head-to-head bowling match, who would win. I'm probably going to go you on that one, Scott, although I don't know much about your bowling chops. I usually have too many beers when I'm bowling, so usually not a good sign. Yeah, although that helps.
Bowling's an adult drinking game. It's one of those games. It's like darts. It's like pool. It's a social game. It's you may have a beer or two. I'm the kind of guy, I pick up my spares. I just don't throw enough strikes, but I do what I'm supposed to do. It's like in golf. I'm a good putter. I don't hit the ball to the moon or anything, but I'm pretty good around the green. So that's what you get with me. If I'm your pool partner, every time I'm up on the stick, I usually drop a couple of balls. I'm not running the table, but I'm reliable. I would not be the field goal kicker who makes the 60-yarders, but I'd make everything inside the 45.
Yeah, I'm streaky. I got highs and lows. That's what I'll say about my bowling game. Nick Novo actually asked us a serious fantasy question here. Who to start at wide receiver 2 in a PPR format? Juju Smith-Schuster, Romeo Doubs, Isaiah McKenzie, or the aforementioned George Pickens, who we just talked about here. These are guys like pretty much in that same bucket. Like, you probably wish they were your receiver 3, but if you got them, roll them out as a receiver 2 in a bye week situation. I mean, my eyes are drawn to Juju here just because of the game environment. And like, he's getting a ton of targets. They're just never downfield. He's just not that good. He's just not that good of a player. Am I wrong to be drawn to Juju here, or should we move? It's like enough already with Juju. Are we at that point, Scott?
No, I think Juju is the safest play here. He's the best floor. I can't play McKenzie off of not being part of this offense last week, and just there's a lot of moving parts of the Bills. McKenzie would be the last guy I would play. I just talked myself into Pickens going to the moon. Pickens would be my pick. I wouldn't fight you on Juju. I can't play McKenzie, and I think Dobbs is like a half tier below the other guys.
Yeah, Dobbs I think is interesting just because that Jets defense does invite itself to being burned vertically, but I just have no real faith in like talk about the buoyancy of the Packers offense right now, coming off that game against the Giants. But let's move on to another one here. Deesh asked us, half PPR flex play, James Robinson, the aforementioned Romeo Doubs, or Tony Pollard. I mean, talk about like 3 dudes I don't want to start, right? I feel like Pollard might be the right answer though, just because of where I'm at with James Robinson.
Yeah, Pollard, he have the 7-carry, 59-yard, line. It's like, we just got to live with Zeke's always going to be their guy, and they're going to play to the contract, and Pollard's going to crush him in efficiency, but that doesn't get you anywhere. The Robinson arrows headed in the wrong direction. ETN outsnaps him 2 straight weeks. He did nothing with it in Philadelphia, but ETN was the better player on the field last week. I actually like the Colts to win that game, which may sound kind of crazy because Jacksonville won the first matchup so easily. I'm going to go Pollard, knowing that Robinson's going to get more opportunity, but I just know that when Pollard touches the ball, something good is going to happen. I can't say I'm confident about that with Robinson right now, and Dobbs just a little bit further. I need a little show me game from Dobbs, I think, before he's more proactive for me as a starter. So three reasonable options. You have to be okay with Pollard never getting a huge amount of market share, but I'm going to use him.
Yeah, I don't think that Romeo Doubs is the steak of the meal, to go back to your Cobb salad analogy. But I mean, he could be a little bit more potatoes, right? Like, come on, you got to get a few more carbs on your plate there, build up energy for the rest of the day, Green Bay. Let's take a few more here before we jump out, and let's stay in that Sunday night game. We got a question from Lady Chief, I think, on Twitter. Who should I start in the flex, Adam Thielen or Devontae Smith? Obviously, Devontae Smith, tough matchup with the Dallas Cowboys defense, Scott, but if you look at the volume, it's been going his way lately, even in some games more so than AJ Brown.
Yeah, this is one I steal from your notebook. I mean, receivers a variance position. It's a boom or bust position, and Devonta Smith is extreme to that case. But and I know air yards can be frustrating, but you got to live with the fact that he's never that far away from a 5-118 in one line. I have to play Devonta Smith. Thielen now, you're just hoping when Thielen plays, you're hoping he gets one of those 3 or 4 yard Adam Thielen touchdowns. But they've steered in so much to Jefferson right now, and Thielen is in his 30s. I got to play Smith.
Yeah, man. I think that Smith against a cornerback room with Trayvon Diggs, who takes some chances. Like, Smith is such a good route runner. This could be one of those boom games, even if on paper it's like, oh, the passing defense in Dallas is really, really good. Just from like a football matchup type perspective, I could see Devontae Smith getting a couple big ones there. This one's interesting, not a start sit question, but a trade one. Isaac Pekka. You're lucky I get to read these Twitter handles or these YouTube handles, Scott. Would you trade Rashad Bateman and A.J. Dillon for Brian Robinson and Christian Kirk? This is interesting here because, rest of the season rankings perspective, I got Christian Kirk ahead of Rashad Bateman. Even as much as I like Bateman, he's not going to play this week. He's missing time, and I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to have Brian Robinson behind A.J. Dillon at this point either.
Yeah, I like the Kirk and Robinson side. Even though the Washington offense is hard to trust, they showed last night what they want to do with Robinson. First and second down pounding, goal line back for whenever Washington may matriculate inside the 20. I'm not sure how often it will be. And Kirk is healthy right now and Bateman isn't. Yeah, Dillon hasn't been used quite as much as I think we expected before the season. That could change, but yeah, I got to go the Robinson-Kirk side.
All right, let's take this last one here from Max B on YouTube. Full PPR, start 3, 2 wide receivers, and a flex. Tyreek Hill, Cortland Sutton, Gabe Davis, and Ramondre Stevenson. Good problem to have. Yeah, I wish I had your problems, Max. But sitting Gabe against the Chiefs does make me want to puke. So, how would you advise somebody like this? We know that Dalton Del Don has Ramondre Stevenson as the number 1 overall back this week, so can't really bench him.
I have to play Stevenson. Man, I think Sutton's my sit because how do you break ties? A lot of times it's with the quarterback. Although if you wanted to sit Hill because you didn't want to ride with a backup quarterback in Miami, I would live with it. Here's the way I'll attack it. I have to play Stevenson. I have to play Gabe Davis. And because your roster is this deep, you're just going to have to live with the fact that your bench is going to outscore your starters sometimes. Maybe you can – this would be a great case of – could you trade 2 of these guys and get a no-brainer? Could you trade Cortland Sutton and Stevenson and get Justin Jefferson or something? I don't know. Maybe your league doesn't trade or whatever. But when you're going to have a roster this deep, you're going to have to live with sometimes you're going to see 28 points next to the guy you didn't play. I have to play Davis. I have to play Stevenson. I'm leaning towards sitting Sutton, but I would also listen to sitting Tyreek Hill as well, only because Miami doesn't have its right answer at quarterback right now.
Max notes he's in a 12-team league and he's 5-0 so far.
Of course you are.
Yeah, of course you are. Yeah, you got a good.
I'm glad you're 5-0. If you were Max, if you were 2-3 with this team, I'd be like, man, I would switch managers. I would send you off with Matt Rule and get somebody else in charge of this team. Congratulations on showing off on our show here.
Get an in-game manager like an in-game decision maker like Nathaniel Hackett had to do after 2 weeks for the Broncos.
Right?
I
don't know how many leagues I'm in, Matt, but I can tell you how many 5-0 teams I have. That would be 0. So
same.
Hats off to Max.
Yeah, I got some good 4-1. I got a couple of good 4-1 teams.
Sure.
Yeah, for good teams, but no 5-0 teams. No. Scott, when you have as many, I don't know how many teams Max has, but I feel like when you have as many teams as we end up falling ass backwards into when we're in the industry, it's just I don't have a prayer of having a 5-0 team. I was helping my mom a little bit with her fantasy team. Don't tell her friends in the Treviso.
Is she 5-0? Tell me mom's 5-0.
4-1. She finally took her first. She finally took her first L last week though, but she started 4-0, scoring the most points in the league. So she had some good stuff going there, but not her chance last time. Our guy Michael Pittman. Not great.
It's well known that Yahoo Fantasy Analysis does very well in mom leagues, so I'm glad to hear that she's 4-1. That's that should be part of our marketing strategy. I don't know why we've dropped the ball on that for so long, but Yahoo Sports, helping moms to fantasy championships since 2003.
We love to see it. All right, guys. Well, this has been great. Scott, thank you for hanging out with me. If you haven't already, remember, subscribe to the Yahoo Fantasy Football Forecast. Week 6 preview fully up there. And if you still didn't get your question answered, if you're still tilting on Sunday morning, of course you can watch FFL. that's great. But Scott also does an awesome Q&A at Yahoo Fantasy every Sunday morning during the show. So, pull it up on one screen, but make sure you're asking Scott your questions on Sunday morning because he crushed it. I mean, your fingers afterwards, dude, must have to like take a ice bath.
Yeah, it's a whirlwind, but it goes fast. It's a labor of love. I'm just jealous of the choices people have, because everybody's got right? 4 or 5. People they'll ask me either or questions, and I'll say both. I would start both of those guys. Somebody's going to ask me like a Ramondre Stevenson or question. I'll be like, I'll start both of those guys. But yeah, happy to do it. And of course, the show is great with Andy and Matt and Tank, and they have special guests on all the time. So but it's the hour you need. This is why fantasy football is so great, right? Because it's concentrated into certain times where you need to pay attention. That's the 1 hour where everybody who plays fantasy football has their eyeballs on their computer, on their phone, wherever you consume all this stuff. So come hang out. You want to hang out with the guys on video? That's great. You want to hang out with me on Twitter? That's great. Your success is our reward.
We love it. We love to help you more so than we love to even win on our own teams. At least
and moms go right to the front. If you tell them it's for your mom league, I will answer your question above anybody else's.
All right, Scott. Appreciate you, man. Thanks so much, everybody else out there watching. Thanks, and good luck here in week 6.